Okay, so I'll start the session now. Is it visible and my sound's clear?
Yes, sir.
So we only have around 3 weeks left for this semester, and I think there are still two main topics. So I will explain about the fluid and solid particle. Okay, so the keyword here is the presence of particle in the stream, how it will affect the Reynolds, how it will affect the hydrodynamics, and later, of course, we will also talk about the pressure drop. So I would expect around 4 hours at least, or at most 5 hours about this particle. So for today, it's only the introduction about the force balance and how the Reynolds numbers will be calculated for a particle system. Okay, and on Thursday we will talk about some of the applications of the particle flow. So previously we only talk about essentially only talking about a fluid. Okay, that means only a liquid and a gas system, either as a pure or as a combined liquid and gas flow. So now the question is, how if there is a presence of solids inside of the stream? Okay, and some of the application for this kind of system, you can see it in this picture. Okay, so for example, these two picture over here, these are a filtration unit. Okay, so filter press, plate and frame press, or centrifugal filtration. Okay, so the keyword here is a filtration, and as you can imagine and as the name implied, the application of filtration, of course, is to separate the solid from the combined stream with the fluid. Okay, but of course, first we have to understand about the solid characteristic itself. Okay, so that's a filtration, and then the second and the third and the fourth one, these two over here, we can classify it as settling. Okay, sometime we can also refer it to gravity chamber. Okay, but some of the other common terminology is settling. That means we provide enough time, we provide enough space so that the gravity will cause the presence of solid goes towards downward to the bottom because of a heavier density. Okay, so you can imagine over here, let's say, okay, maybe you can find it in PLTU. Okay, PLTU is a coal power generator. For example, in Jakarta, probably there are some PLTU in somewhere around Tanjung Priok. Okay, you can imagine that the coal is supposed to be combusted, but sometimes it's not perfectly combusted. That means it still contains some kind of solid, ash, and so on. So, but before we want to emit the flue gas into the stack, okay, or the environment, of course, some of the particle has to be settled, okay, has to be separated because of the environment regulation and so on. And we can imagine that the solid has a greater density than the fluid, so that if we provide enough time, if we provide enough space, the particle will goes towards the bottom part because of the heavier density. That's called as a settling. Okay, so the longer the gravity chamber, there is a better chance for the particle to settle. Okay, and we can also imagine that, of course, the size of the particle will affects this characteristic. Okay, for example, probably over here we're talking about a big particle. Okay, maybe this is something like a big particle diameter of a particle. When we have a big particle diameter, let's say 1 millimeter, okay, or 0.1 millimeter, of course it's heavier and it's easier to be settled. Okay, but for some of those lighter particle, okay, it's gonna take longer for the particle to settle. Okay, because it's maybe the density is less, or maybe the size is small enough that it's not easy to be settled, and so on and so on. Okay, so that's also another examples of particles presence in a stream. Okay, and last but not least, this is the last type, which is called as a fluidization. Okay, which is called as a fluidization. And again, this is a very emerging technologies in chemical engineering. Okay, let me finish the writing. Fluidization. So some of the common examples or application of fluidization is you can find one in oil refinery. Okay, you can Google it. It's called RFCC, or residual fluid catalytic cracking. Okay, so that means the heavy parts of the crude oil in, let's say, in Cilacap refinery, the value is not as high as the lighter compound that can be sold as a gasoline and so on. So the residue has to be cracking. Okay, it has to be cracked using a catalytic conversion, and based on the development, it was found that the use of fluidization, what does it mean? That means the catalyst over here is the particle. Okay, you can see a lot of particles going around here. It's fluidized. Fluidized means it's being fly around because of the flow, gas flow coming from the bottom. That's the gas flow coming from the bottom, and it leaves the catalyst to be fluidized. Okay. So of course the hydrodynamics becomes different when we are talking without the existence of the solid. Okay. Another application, again, another big application, I think, emerging technology again in PLTU. I think in the last 10 years or so, PLN built a lot of new PLTU with this kind of fluidized combustion, okay, fluidized coal combustion. So again, of course, we have to understand about how much, what is the correct velocity to be selected in order to lift this particle, and then how high the reactor has to be, how high the chamber has to be, and so on and so on. So that's why it is important first for us to understand about the basic particle concept. The difference between a solid and a solid particle flow. Fluid in this case is a gas or a liquid. Of course, it fills the space. Okay, of course, the main characteristic is it fills the space. That means if we have a vertical pipeline, and then we have either a liquid or a gas. Okay, all of the space inside of this vertical pipeline will be filled by the liquid or by the gas. Okay, so it's possible to get into a continuous flow. Okay, so now it becomes different when it comes to solid particles, because you can imagine that if we have a vertical pipeline without any fluid, so we only have a particle. Okay, we only have a particle, so it will not fills all the space available in the pipeline. Okay, even there is an argument that we will not get into a continuous flow. Okay, because there is no shear force, there is no viscosity, and so on and so on. Okay, so either it has to be transported using gravity. Okay, it's possible using gravity, or it has to be supported by the presence of fluid. Okay, and that's a important characteristic. Okay, so maybe it depends on the case. Sometimes the solid will act as impurities. Okay, so if I go back into this application, this application over here, it's an elimination of particles, because the particles is impurities. It's not intended, it's not required, so we have to separate it. because the particles initially is combined with inside of the raw gas. Okay? But for in some of other application, it's actually the process is designed with the presence of solid by design. Okay? The example, of course, is the fluidization. Okay? Inside of this RFCC, inside of this FCC coal burner, it is designed to flow a coal circulation, okay, or catalyst circulation, but it cannot flow independently without the help of the fluid. Okay, that means over here the gas is full from the bottom. Some of the other objective is also to help the particle to goes upward. Okay, so that has to be understood, that inside of the pipeline, solid cannot be flowed independently. So maybe it has to be helped by fluidizing air or fluidizing fluid, or it's mixed together with some of the other fluid. Okay, and so because the space is not completely filled with the solid, so we have to introduce a new variable that is called as a void fraction, or sometimes it's also called as a porosity, which is essentially express the same thing. Okay, you can call it void fraction, you can call it porosity. How porous the vessel is. Okay, porosity, and it will determine the regimes of the particles. Okay, the void fraction, if it's expressed as fraction, of course the value could be 0 to 1. Okay, of course the value can be 0 to 1, and if it's 0, that means all of the space are filled by solid. Okay, so there is actually no space for fluid to enters the space, because all of them are filled by solid. So maybe the illustration here is if you have a silo. Okay, let's imagine a silo filled by some kind of solid. Okay, let's say you put some, I don't know what kind of solid material, cement probably, or soil. Okay, let's say we're talking about a cement industry or cement plant. So in the final silo, it's completely filled by cement. Okay, so in this case, all of them are filled by solid. So in this case, the void fraction is equal to 0. Okay, void fraction is equal to 0. And the opposite is if we don't have any presence of solid. Okay, so only empty vessel that all of the space can be used for fluid velocity, okay, free of solid. Over here, the void fraction could be defined as 1 because it's completely voided. Okay, it's completely voided, it's completely porous. Okay, so somewhere in between over here, there will be some different regimes. Okay, maybe there is some fixed bed solid, there is some fluidized bed solid, and so on, depending on how packed the solid inside of the vessel. Okay, so maybe if we have something look like this, almost like a pack column. Okay, almost like a pack column. Maybe the void fraction here is around 0.4 or something. That means 40% of the space are filled by the solid. Okay, 0.4. But for some of the other more fluidized regimes, okay, maybe it's not as packed as the second example. So maybe we have a lot of free space, but there is some presence of solid inside of the system. So maybe in this kind of regimes, later the void fraction is around 0.8, 0.7, and so on. Okay, even in one equipment, it's actually possible to obtain a different section with different void fraction. Okay, I think this picture perfectly sum up those distribution. Okay, you can see that at the bottom, maybe this is the accumulation of the bigger particles. So most of the bigger particles accumulate close to the bottom. So the void fraction close to 0.3, 0.4 resembles the fixed bed arrangement. But at the top, actually this is the area where the 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 lighter particle exists, and because it's lighter, then it's easier to be fluidized, and the section is more porous. Okay, so over here you can actually see that this is already expressed as a function of volume fraction, void fraction. So at the top, maybe it's already higher than 0.6 something. Okay, it's from 0 is blue, and then red is 0.5, and maybe if we have closer to a white, that's close to 1. Okay, that means it's completely voided. So we have to we have to ask the question, how can I know the regimes of my particles stream, whether it's completely laminar, it's completely turbulent, or somewhere in between, and so on and so on. So the additional phenomenon that has not been discussed in detail in the previous chapter. Now there is a chance that the particle will collide. Okay, there is a chance that the particle will collide. So a collision between particles may affect the pressure drop, may affect the flow distribution. Okay, and then how the particle itself will collide with the vessel walls. Okay, how the particle will collide with the vessel walls. Again, it could affect the additional pressure drop. It could affect to the some of the uneven flow distribution, and so on and so on. Okay. And the particle motion condition, fluid flows through a stationary particles. Okay, that means in this case there is an application where we have to separate the velocity of the particle with the velocity of the fluid. Okay, there is some application where the velocity of the particle is 0. Okay, stationary particle. So it's like a fixed bed. If I talk about fixed bed, that means the particle remains unmoved. Okay, the particle velocity is 0. But there are some velocity in the fluid parts. Okay, so the velocity in the fluid parts is greater than 0. Okay, maybe the application is in the fixed bed reactor, fixed bed absorber. Okay, adsorber. So there is a case where UF, so that's F, okay, where UF is bigger than 0 because there is a flow in the fluid, but the particle velocity is 0. But there is also another case, maybe where the U particle is equal to the velocity of the fluid. Okay, maybe there is some application where it flows together. Okay, and both of them are bigger than 0. Okay, and maybe there is a system where the particle and the fluid move in opposite direction. And again, there is some application where the particle and fluid move in the same direction. So some key points over here is we have to define how the UF and the UP interacts. Okay, and if you remember about the Reynolds number in the previous chapter, we always refer the Reynolds number as a function of the velocity of the fluid. We never talk about the velocity of the particle. Okay, so now the question is, which velocity should I use in this kind of Reynolds particle? Okay, so later I will explain it. Okay, but as a heads up, when we try to calculate Reynolds particle, okay, so that's Re, comma subscript P. Okay, subscript P refers to particle. More likely it has to be calculated as a function of slip velocity. Okay? So slip velocity, so it's U slip. Okay, and slip velocity will have to consider the interaction between the UP with the UF. Okay, so it's not calculated entirely on the velocity of the gas or the of the fluid, but rather calculated as a function of slip velocity. Okay. Okay, so this is a slip velocity. Okay, I'll continue the explanation up until the slide, and later I will open the opportunity if you have any question. So now the slip velocity is the relative difference between the particle velocity with the fluid velocity. Okay. So if you have the fluid velocity to be bigger than the particle velocity, you can define the slip velocity as UFP, U fluid relative to particle. That means the formula will becomes velocity of the fluid minus the velocity of the particle. And in contrast, if you have a system where the particle velocity is higher than the fluid velocity, then it becomes UPF, or U particle relevant to fluid. So the formula becomes UP minus U. Okay, so that's the velocity. This slip velocity is the one that has to be substituted into the Reynolds particle calculation. Okay, so you're not talking entirely on the fluid velocity, you're not talking entirely about the particle velocity, but it is the relative difference. Okay, so it could be plus minus depending on the whether it flows in the opposite direction or in the same direction. Okay, so the velocity difference between the particle and the fluid could lead to unbalanced pressure distribution and viscous shear stress. Okay. So that's also, I'll explain a little bit about this in the next slide. So it's not completely even. Okay, it's not completely even about the interaction between the particle and the fluid. Okay, so it will yield a force known as a drag force. Okay, drag force in bahasa, I think it's translated into gaya seret. Okay, gaya seret. So if you look at previously in your high school probably, or in TPB, and you're talking about drag force, okay, or gaya seret. So remember, this is the one that we're talking about, and this is the concept that is applied in a lot of different application. Not only in chemical engineering that I give some introduction in the earlier slide, but actually drag coefficient or drag force is a very fundamental concept that is applied in aeroplane. Okay, so a mechanical engineer and aeronautical engineers learn about this drag force even more detail, I think, than chemical engineers, so that the aerodynamic, the shape of the aeroplane has to be designed in such a way to utilize this drag force, so that the plane can fly in an efficient manner. Okay. So yeah, this is the looks of the drag coefficient that I'm talking about. So assuming that the particles are sphere, okay, or spherical shape, the flow distribution, the pressure distribution, the momentum distribution could be different in different points of the particle. Okay, so if we have point A over here, where it is at the back of the particle and at the center of the particle, there is even distribution to the upward and the downward of the particle, but there is not even distribution in the left part and the right part of the particle. Why? Because in this point A, this is the point where the fluid is actually push the particle. This is the point where if we have a stream coming from left to right, it pushes directly to the area of this particle. That gives a pressure. If you remember, it has to be perpendicular to make it treated as a pressure. And point A and point D is not even in terms of the velocity profile, in terms of the momentum profile, in terms of the pressure profile. Okay, why? Because in point D, actually there is no direct pressure absorbed by this particle, because actually in this point we could say that there is minimum contact between the particle with the flow itself. Okay, because the flow is already pushed towards the right part of the stream. Okay, and in the B and the C part, again, of course, the pressure gradient, of course, the pressure distribution, of course, the momentum distribution, the force balance is not exactly the same with the particles in point A. Okay, so the shape is different, and this has to be rounded or approximated in general, so that but we have to be aware that the shape of the particle would affect the drag coefficient. Okay, so that's a key takeaway. If we have a sphere, okay, if we have a sphere, maybe the distribution will look like this. Okay, but later if we have a some kind of extrude, okay, extrusion or extrude like a pasta, of course the distribution will be different. Okay, maybe it's not gonna be as extreme as this sphere flow. Maybe the flow will look like that. Okay, and the drag coefficient of course will be different in this different shape of particles. Okay, just keep in mind that in terms of the Reynolds particle, that's the generic correlation. Okay, the density part, this is still the fluid density. Okay, so that's not the density of the solid, it's still the fluid density. So if we're talking about it's fluidized by an air, for example, so you can still use the density of the oxygen and the nitrogen. Okay, that part is still the same with the typical Reynolds calculation. The mu part also here is quite simple, in meaning that it still use the fluid viscosity. Again, if we use air as a fluidizing agent, we simply need to use the viscosity of the atmospheric air. Okay, so the main difference now would be in the velocity part and the diameter, obviously. Okay, this is the main difference between the particle Reynolds with the standard Reynolds number. Okay, usually we just know that a Reynolds number is a rho velocity diameter of the pipeline per mu, right? So that's the main difference. Usually we calculate here as rho velocity and then the diameter of the inner diameter of the pipeline divided by the mu. Okay. Again, the rho and the mu part is actually quite similar, but here it's completely different between the diameter part. In particle Reynolds, we use directly the equivalent particle diameter. Okay, so if we're talking about 1 millimeter particle diameter, then we use those 1 millimeter as the particle diameter, not the diameter of the pipeline that we are using in the system. Okay, and the second difference is of course about the velocity, as I implied before. Okay, previously we only focus on the fluid velocity, but now we have to use the slip velocity, u minus up. Okay, so that's the slip velocity in absolute, so that the number would be positive. Okay, okay, I'll open the opportunity if you have any questions about the application or the Reynolds particle or the slip velocity. Any questions, or is it clear? Okay, so again, this is very important correlation. Okay, I think it's much better if you can remember this formula, because almost all application we always start with the Reynolds particle. Okay, so how to calculate the slip velocity, the deviation between the particle velocity and the fluid velocity, and then the diameter of the particle. Okay, and of course, because the formula is different, then the limit or the boundary between the turbulent and the laminar regimes becomes different. Okay, so in this correlation, in a typical Reynolds number, maybe we can say that it's laminar. If it's less than 2100, probably in most of the books, I think roughly less than 2100 as a laminar. that can be defined as laminar in typical without any presence of solid. Okay, and it can be classified as a turbulent. I think it's if it's bigger than 3000 at least. Okay, or even more. So of course this number is not applied anymore in the particle presence. Okay, because the formula becomes different. Now we use the particle diameter, we use the slip velocity, and so on. So actually the number is smaller than this 2100 and 3000. Okay, some of the books it actually has a different limit between this turbulent and laminar regimes in a particle. Okay, so some book will say that laminar will be found if we have a particle number below 1 or below 2 or below 0.5, somewhere around those region. Okay, somewhere around those region. 0.2, 0.5 up until 1. That's usually the limiting number of a laminar particle Reynolds regime, around 0.2 up until 1. Okay, and of course the turbulent will be above those number. Okay, so just at this point, just be mindful about the difference of the fraction used in the formula, and then be mindful with the different numbers to justify the regimes of the particle. Okay, so again, I think this is the more explanations about the different 4 points of this particle balance. Okay, so let me change the pointer. Over here, the point D, that's an increased pressure at point D. Again, at this point, the particle is not in direct contact with the fluid that's coming from the left part. Okay, and flow separation at point B, upper and lower part is not symmetrical. So again, in order to answer all of this question, we have to understand the overall flow balance in the system. We know that the particle must have some gravity force. Okay, we know that the particle must have some gravity force, and then so if we later again I think there is a slide talking about the force balance, but just as an introduction, of course there will be some gravity contributions to the bottom part of the particle. Okay, and in opposite or in contrast, there will be some buoyant force. Okay, there will be some buoyant force. So however small it is, there must be some buoyant force in the system. Okay, and again the last part is actually the drag force. Okay, it's actually the drag force. So how the particle will affect the drag force? So if it's the horizontal pipeline, for example, okay, and we have a flow coming to that direction, okay, it's natural for the wall of the pipeline to receive a drag wall in those direction. Okay, and at the same time, there must be some drag force to the upper part of the wall. Okay, because of the friction and the particle and the fluid is dragging the pipe wall. Okay, so that's the drag. So later we'll talk about the formula, but in principle, don't forget about the presence of these three forces when a particle exists in the system. Okay, we have a gravity force, we have a buoyant force, and last we have a drag force. Okay. Okay, so here more explanation about drag force. The pressure at this point is relative low. The pressure difference between the front part and the back part generate force as known as a drag force. Okay, because of the difference between the pressure at point B and point C, or point D versus point A, this difference in pressure cause what is known as a drag force. And this is the illustration. If the shape of the particle is different, okay, so of course the drag force and the drag coefficient will be different. Okay, so this is to give you some illustration. Okay, see over here, this is if the shape is like a rectangular. Okay, what if the particle looks like a pasta? Okay, extruded. So in this case, maybe the drag force is not as big as the sphere. Okay, why? Because the presence of the extruded or this pasta is actually not giving any big difference in terms of the momentum in the system, in the pipeline. Okay, minimum of effect on the momentum balance, minimum effect on the force balance. So of course the drag force contribution becomes lower than what is found in a sphere particle. Okay. This is the typical or roughly the quantitative contribution of the drag force. Okay, so you can imagine that if it's like a very thin, it's very thin rectangular, okay, or a very thin extruded like a pasta, it's likely that the drag will be non-existent or close to zero. Okay, so the drag will close to zero, so it's only gonna be more or less treated as a typical friction in the fluid. Okay, but the bigger or now maybe when we have a sphere like in this third examples, okay, the drag will contribute to nearly 90% compared to the typical friction in a presence without any solid presence. Okay, so 90% of the friction will be contributed by this drag force because of the difference force, because of the different pressure between different point of the particle. Okay, and if the particle is rotated, okay, and it push the flow towards the different uneven distribution because of this presence of solid. This is where the drag force will contribute to almost 100% of the force balance in the system. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, let me continue. So we know that the particle geometry now holds a very important factor in determining the drag force, okay, or the drag coefficient exerted on the body, whether it's a sphere, whether it's a square, or any other type of shape of the particle. Okay. So now a lot of this is actually derived from experiment. Okay, so some engineers or scientists plot different type of particle shape and then measure the pressure along the way, measure the force along the way, and then later derive or make some approximation to give some empirical equation. Okay, so it's not like an analytical derivation because of this different characteristic with different shape of particles. Okay, so for a solid object immersed, drag coefficient is a ratio of drag force per area to the results of density and velocity multiplication. And this is the formula that again will be very important for you to understand how the utilization or how to be used. Okay, and at least this I think at least there are two new variables introduced over here, what is called as a drag coefficient or CD, okay, and what is called as a drag force. The other part is actually quite similar to what has been taught in this semester of fluid mechanics. Okay, so FD is a drag force. Okay, So if we already know the shape of the particle, the diameter of the particle, the velocity of the particle, the density, the viscosity, and so on, it's actually now possible for us to estimate how the profile of the particles will look like in a system. Okay, simply by substituting those numbers into this coefficient or into this formula. Okay, so usually it starts with the Drake coefficient. Okay, so you may ask, what's the meaning of Drake coefficient, or what's the purpose of knowing the Drake coefficient? So it's simply a coefficient that will be used when we calculate the drag force. Okay. So later when we know to calculate the drag force, it's actually a function of drag coefficient, and then the cross area, AP over here, is a cross area. So for a sphere, it's gonna be phi per 4 d square, particle diameter square, phi per 4 d square. For cylinder, it's gonna be perpendicular to the flow direction. Okay, so it has to be perpendicular. So that means if you have a horizontal pipeline, it flows to that number. So the drag, if you remember, that it will be perpendicular. So that's why we are talking about the area in the what do you call it? I'm not sure about the translation. Okay, so in bahasa it's the selimut of the cylinder. Okay, so that's why the area is diameter times length of the cylinder. Okay, if it's in sphere, then sphere will look like that. Okay, so of course it's the area of the circle. Okay. For the other parameters, just match on this number. Okay, so if we want to calculate the drag force, CD can be estimated using the upper correlation, the FD per A rho U square per rho, or there is actually later a derivation or a starting point for most of the CD. Okay, and this can be derived from a chart. Okay, so a starting point for CD usually can be gathered from a chart. Okay, and I think that approach is actually a faster way for you to finalize this correlation or this calculation. So you start by assuming the velocity of the system, then you know the CD from the chart. By knowing the CD of the particle, then you can calculate the drag force. Okay. The other, I think you can match it, that the rho it's again the density of the fluid. Okay, not the density of the solid. Okay, U is the flow rate, so and so on. Okay, so I will skip this part first because this is a derivation of Stokes law coming from the FD correlation over here. FD is equal to CD AP rho velocity square per 2. Okay, and actually it can be used to derive the Stokes law correlation. Okay, for laminar area where here the limit point is 1, where it can be considered as a laminar. Okay, and if the particle is spherical, then the derivation of CD and FD will give you the correlation of Stokes law. So this is actually correlation of Stokes law. Okay, why? Because it was found based on some experiment. Okay, it was found from experiment that in laminar condition, CD will be roughly equal to 24 divided by Reynolds particle. Okay, so CD is 24 divided by Reynolds particle. When you substitute those number into this equation, okay, that becomes NRE per 24 based on the empirical estimation of the CD, NRE per 24. Okay, and then you substitute into this initial formula, it ends up with the definition of Stokes law, which is 3 phi mu d times u. Okay, it's derived from those correlation. So this is the chart that I would like to use, I think, as a last part of this lecture before we continue on Thursday. So here is the quick way for you to estimate what is the drag coefficient. If you already know the Reynolds numbers of the particles, okay, then you can simply use this chart to estimate the CD. Okay, so here, if we're talking about a laminar, previously it was mentioned that the limit would be up until Reynolds up until 1. Okay, so that's a laminar velocity, laminar regimes. So you can see that at this region, it's still roughly straight line correlation. Okay, that's why the CD in this part can be calculated simply as CD is equal to 24 per RE particle, because it's a straight line, right? And based on this measurement, or based on this experiment, it was found that it's actually still acceptable for us, let's say, to push this limit of Reynolds. Okay, so if you're still working in around up until, let's say, that region, okay, until Reynolds of 4, 6, or let's say up until 10 for some rounding number, then you can more or less calculate the CD as a function of 24 per RE. Okay, once you know those CD, then you can go back again to the drag force calculation and so on, because everything now is complete to be calculated, and that's called as a laminar. Okay, and then this is turbulent, but mild turbulent. Maybe I would say it's the mild turbulent. Okay, it's already turbulent but relatively mild compared to the other region. Okay, it's mild turbulent part. So in the mild turbulent part, where the Reynolds is around 1,000 up to 200,000 of Reynolds particle. Okay, check it into this region. Okay, that's 1,000, and then 200,000 will be somewhere around this point. Okay, so if the shape is roughly a disk, okay, then CD is actually very easy to be calculated. Okay. If it's a disk, then you match it to this part. Okay, so it's gonna be around 1.12. Okay, so just knowing the shape of the particle, okay, I can simply get my CD for a disk particle, this shape particle, to be 1.12. But if I have a sphere, okay, if I have a sphere, that will be somewhere in this region. Okay, that will be somewhere in this region, and that is actually somewhere around 0.4 something. Okay, so, and this is actually from Giancoplis, if I'm not mistaken. So if you open the book from Giancoplis, it's common assumption, if you're working somewhere around 1,000 up until 200,000 of Reynolds particle, then you can simply use a CD of 0.44 if your particle shape is a sphere. Okay, again, once you know this number, then you can go back again to this correlation. This is what I meant. What I mean by CD can be found from a chart. Okay, okay, it's a mild turbulent. It's a sphere. I can use simply 0.44 as my drag coefficient, so that I can finish the rest of the drag force calculation, later the terminal velocity, and so on and so on. And in extreme turbulent regimes, okay, bigger than 500,000, CD again is relatively constant. Okay, for sphere, so 500,000, where is that? I think somewhere around this region. Okay, somewhere around this region. So that's the region where it's acceptable when we round the CD to be around 0.2. Okay, 0.2 is somewhere around here. Don't forget this is a logarithmic chart. Okay, so please remember how to read logarithmic chart properly. Okay, and for a disk, again, this is still the extension of the previous line. So even in a very extreme mild turbulent, the CD is still somewhere around 1.12. Okay. Okay, so I think that's it from me. Okay, for today. Before the class on Thursday, okay, please read this exercise. I think I already upload the updated slide in the MS Teams yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, this one. Yesterday after evening, I uploaded the updated slide. We already finished up until the chart. Okay, the chart explanation. So please do this exercise, and then we'll discuss quickly on Thursday about how to determine the drag force of the solid particles. Okay, so the Reynolds particle is provided, then you can use the chart over here, and then you calculate the FD as the last part. And actually, the examples, the solution is provided over here, but I think I want to give you some time to calculate using the number directly. Okay. Okay, any questions up until now? Okay, so if you don't have any question, then I'll conclude the session. Again, please read this slide, okay? At least up until the exercise, and if you have time, then continue on the mass balance. Sorry, not mass balance, force balance. This is the force balance. So we will conclude this slide to talk about the terminal velocity, okay? Which is the velocity at the maximum velocity at free fall condition, okay? Which can be derived again from drag coefficient. So if you're still questioning what's the purpose of all of this explanation, okay, again, remember later when we talk about the application next weeks, let's say for settling, okay, let's say for settling that I wrote over here. Now we can justify the velocity selection to be more precise based on the particle shape, based on the particle size, based on the terminal velocity. Okay, so in the meantime, please perform the exercise. Okay, in slide 18. Okay, I think I'll finish the session. See you on Thursday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.